people, my name's Caitlin. Welcome to my channel. Today I have a very exciting video for you guys, and that is my March book haul and my April TBR. So my book hauls on this channel are going to be a little different because I'm an avid supporter of libraries. My first job was at a library. I love libraries. Shout out to my library ladies. It's amazing. And so every month I check out a stack of books. And so that also ends up being my TBR for that month because I have to read them in that amount of time. I also have a few arcs from publishers that I will also haul each month and tell you which books I want to read that month because they come out soon. So let's begin. I'm going to start off with the books I got from publishers. The first one is The Honey Farm by Harriet Alida Lai. And first off, this cover is stunning. I love it. This is from Liverite Press, and they've been doing awesome work lately. I've read a lot of books by them that have just been amazing. So I'm really excited to get to this one. It is about a honey farm, and it's about these people that work on the farm, but then mysterious stuff starts to happen, and it kind of sounds like it's a magical realism mystery. So once again, I'm super excited to read it this month. I do want to read it this month because it comes out in May, so I kind of need to read it. The next arc I have is With One Shot by Dorothy Marsick. And this is a true crime story, and it takes place in Wisconsin. Holla! So the author of this story is a playwright, a screenwriter, a playwright. And her uncle was shot and murdered. And so she grew up hearing this story about how he was murdered. And like something just didn't sit right with her. She's like, the mystery isn't solved here. So she spends 2 years doing extensive research and interviews to figure out what actually happened. This comes out April 2018, and it is from Citadel Press. Now, the rest of the books I have to show you are from the library, so I'm going to show you some poetry I want to read first. The first one is A Strangely Wrapped Gift by Emily Burns. And this is a collection of poetry that has to do with her OCD and living with that mental illness. So I'm excited to get to this. The second one is Pansy by Andrea Gibson, and I adore Andrea Gibson. Her spoken word poetry is phenomenal. So I saw this at the library and I was like, I need this immediately. I'm gonna read this very soon. The next two books are books of fiction, and the first one is The Astonishing Color of After by Emily X.R. Pan. And originally, I have to admit, I was like, what is this book about? Because the cover is beautiful. But then I heard it was like magical realism, and magical realism is, if magical realism is involved, I'm picking it up. This is a story about a Taiwanese girl. Her mother commits suicide, and she's convinced that when her mom committed suicide, she turned into a bird. And she travels to Taiwan to visit her grandparents, and she's looking for her mom, which is a bird. And in this process, she discovers a lot of family secrets. The next one I found at the library, and I had no idea what it was. It just looked interesting, so I picked it up. It is called Peach by Emma Glass, and it is super, super tiny, but it is about this woman who is raped and living with the aftermath of that event and dealing with it and dealing with the trauma of it. So I'm very interested to see how this author portrays trauma. It has a lot of great reviews on the back, so I have high hopes. Our fantasy, because I'm on a fantasy kick, and the first one is the book I'm reading right now, and I cannot get enough of it, The Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. Believe the hype of this book. I'm about halfway through, and it is so worth all the hype it's getting. It takes place in this West African-inspired fantasy world where all the magic is taken away. All the people with magic were murdered by the king, and it takes place from multiple perspectives. So you have the daughter of someone that was murdered, and she is supposed to have magical powers, but all the magic is gone, so she doesn't have them. And then the other two perspectives are the son and the daughter of the king that murdered everyone. And the world building is so good so far, and I cannot wait to finish it. The next fantasy book I have is Restore Me by Tahara Mafi, and I'm such a fangirl of this series. This is the fourth book in the Shatter Me series, and it was announced, I like a year ago that a new book was going to come out, because originally it was just a trilogy. And I love the original series. I love the characters so much. So I'm very excited about this, but also very nervous because I love it so much. I don't want the new one to ruin it. So I'm very scared. And the last 3 books I have to show you are all nonfiction. The first one is Show Your Work by Austin Kleon, 10 Ways to Share Your Creativity and Get Discovered. I read his first book, which is Steal Like an Artist, ages ago, like probably 8 years ago now. Whenever it came out, I read it. And it's just a little handbook about art. And I found the first one very inspiring. So I'm interested to see if I'm just as inspired 8 years later than I was with his first book. The next book I have is We Were 8 Years in Power, an American Tragedy by Ta-Nehisi Coates. Ta-Nehisi. That's how you say it. Coates. And I absolutely fell in love with Between the World and Me, which is his previous book. And ever since that book came out, I read every single one of his essays he's ever published. And this is a collection of some of the essays he has published, but it's all focusing on when Obama was in power in America and how race relations and ideologies and systems all changed for the good and the worse during his time in office. So I'm excited to read this. I hope I learn a lot. He's just a genius, so I'm sure I am. The last book I have to show you is one that is kind of unexpected. I was scrolling through my Goodreads one day because I have like 600 books I want to read on there. And I was like, I'm going to find one I want to read and find it in the library. And I found this on my list, and I'm very excited for this. It is How Dare the Sun Rise by Sandra. I'm not going to attempt to say her last name because I will ruin it, and I do not want to do that. This is a story about a young girl. Well, she's not a young girl anymore, but she grew up in a refugee camp in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where her mom and her sister were shot in front of her. And so she was a refugee from the refugee camp. And she came to America eventually, and she talks about her experience with that, her experience growing up there, her experience coming to America, and how it wasn't such, I don't want to say like an unsafe place, but it wasn't like this magical place that she thought it was going to be. Like, there were a lot of race issues she still had to deal with in America. So those are all the books that I plan on reading in April. Granted, I'm not going to read all those books because I think there's 11 books in that pile. And while I would like to think I would, I'm just not going to. So if you have any books that you really want me to read first, let me know and I will read them. And yeah, let me know what you are going to read this month. And if you've read any of these books, let me know and we can talk about them below. Have a great day. Bye.